everybody, Fiber Spider here with another tutorial just for you. And today we are going to be doing something a little bit different on this channel. Normally it is yarn related. This time, today, we are going to be working with fabric and we are going to be sewing. Yes, this is called a jelly roll race quilt. And I love how this project works up. It is fast, it is simple, it's great for beginners, and I think you guys are really going to like it. And so for this particular tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make the top, what you see here of the quilt. And in a future video, I would like to show you how to construct it so that it also has a backing and some batting in between. That will come in a subsequent video. So, more about the jelly roll race. The reason why it's referred to as a jelly roll race quilt is because you need what is called a jelly roll. It is a rolled up bunch of fabric strips that are 2.5 inches in width and about 40 to 44 inches in length, depending upon the width of the fabric. And they are color coordinated, they go very nicely together, and you only need one jelly roll. That is to say, a traditional jelly roll, which is 40 strips. Now this one happens to be 20, but I have 2 of them. Yes, these were given to me by my friend Russ. Thank you very much, Russ. And I'm using this particular colorway because in a previous video, I asked all of you which one you would like to see me use. So yes, we're going to be using the jade for today's video. And so that being said, yeah, you know what? Let's get started, shall we? Okay. All right, so to begin with, going to open up our jelly rolls to see exactly what we have to work with here. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous colors. And you know, I think I'm going to flip this over because we have the fold of the fabric over here. Now, keep in mind, I have 2 of these. So what I think I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to prepare my fabrics. And what I mean by that is, let's get ourselves all situated here. Okay, so that would be like that. All right, so we have all of our fabrics lined up, ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these pairs of strips and put them together and then pile them up so that when we go to the sewing machine, we will be all set to go and join them all together. Now, for this video, I am going to go based on the assumption that you know how to do some basic sewing. And the reason why I'm not going to go into that for this particular tutorial is because everybody has a different style and model and make of sewing machine. So what may work for me might not work for you. So I'm just going to continue pairing these up, and I will meet back up with you when I am good to go. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I have all of my fabrics paired up, good to go. And before I get started, please keep in mind that this is my first sewing tutorial, so please bear with me, etc., etc. So what I'm going to start with actually is a little scrap of fabric underneath here, lower my foot, and going to run it through. That way it will have a nice even tension as I keep progressing forward. So let me just run this through real quick. There we go. So that's all good to go. Now, as far as our fabric strips, you could iron them first. If the creases are really bad, honestly, I think we're fine. So what I'm going to do is just take 2 strips, and we are going to sew these together end to end. Now, because we have quite a bit of selvage on the ends here, what I might do is trim off the selvage first before I proceed. So I think, you know what, I think I'm going to do that. Is that the case with all of these? Yes, it is. Yeah, we have the selvage, which is sort of a bit of a tougher bit of fabric to work with. So that being said, I'm going to trim off the selvages and then we will officially get started. So bear with me and I will be right back after I've done with the selvages. Okay, it's not always the case when you're working with jelly rolls, but I want to do this right. So I will be right back. Okay, so I finally trimmed off all the selvage. Sorry about the delay. Now, one last thing that we need to do before we actually get started with the sewing, and that is to take either the first or the last strip, and we need to trim it down just a bit. And the reason for that is so that the pattern at the end of our piece, it will be offset. That's very important. So I'm going to trim off about, I don't know, I want to say about a foot or so off of the end of one of my strips here. You know, it's not rocket science, but it does help. Okay, so now this is probably my favorite part of the entire piece, and that is string piecing. Now, the reason why they call it string piecing is because you just piece together everything in one continuous long flow of attaching one piece to another piece, etc., etc. And when I first did this project, I didn't realize that you could do this, but then it came to me. So the other thing you want to do is make sure that you have the right side facing the right side and you're sewing them together so that the wrong sides are facing out. Very important. Okay, so just going to line up my edges here, get them relatively straight, and we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which is fairly standard through a lot of sewing. So let me get myself situated and just sew these together along this short edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now don't cut your thread, don't do anything like that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this top layer of the strip here. So this is the top layer, and I'm going to flip it over a little bit so that I don't have to cut this. I can keep working with this strip here. So flipping it over so that I have the right side facing me, then grab my next strip right here and have the right side of this facing the right side of this. That way I can keep going in one long continuous motion without having to snip my thread, start it over again. This is much, much, much faster and much easier. Just be sure that the right side is facing the right side, and then run this through. Okay, then sort of scoot this to the side, grabbing your strip that you just worked, flip it so that the right side is facing you. Grab the next strip and do the exact same thing. So, right side facing right side, line them up. And sew these together, always 1/4 inch seam allowance. Grabbing the strip that we just worked, flip it so that the right side is facing us. Grab the next one. Open it on up. right side facing the right side, sandwich those together. And connect them. Now, if further down the road you make a mistake and you accidentally sew the say the wrong sides together, well, you know what, you can cut that and you can fix that. It's not a huge problem, but it's much easier if you do it right the first time. So I'm going to keep on keeping on by taking this top strip that we just worked, have the right side facing up, take the next strip, right side facing that, sew that together, and go through all of my remaining strips. And then at the end of that, we will have one really long length of strips that are all sewn together. So I'm going to go through the rest of this, and I will see you in a bit. Be right back. All right, so I got through all of my strips, and I put through another one of those little scraps, little feeder on there, so that I can cut this free. Now, what you're going to want to do at this point is take the whole mass of joined bits of fabric to a more open space so that we can cut this and lay it out and organize it so that it'll be much, much easier to work with in the next step. So I'm going to take this over to my living room floor and we shall continue. All right, so I have freed the fabric from the machine and now we are ready for the next step. Now this may seem a little bit weird, but it will make the next step that much easier. So at this point we have one of our ends right here and the rest of it is connected by all of these little bits of string right here with thread, and we're going to cut them. But as we cut them, we're going to create sort of an accordion, a pleating, if you will, with our strip. Right side facing up, and so I'm going to have the end over here a little bit. And the reason why we want to do this is because the last thing that you want is for your entire length to get all twisted and tangled, which happened to me in a previous attempt on making this quilt, and it became a nightmare because you don't want this twisted. No, no. Now what some people do is they will take that end and they will stick it into the machine, lower the needle, and they will, proceed that way. I don't have a tremendous amount of space, so I like to sort of organize it this way. And so keeping the right side facing up, and then when we come in with more of the length of our strip here, have the right side facing the right side, and got a little join here, so let me just snip that. In fact, I can snip a couple of them. Not a problem. And you don't want this to get terribly tangled, which is very easy to do. Okay, there we go. So from here, sort of laying this on top for a bit and then double back on itself. And then lay this on top and just keep doing this until you are done with your strip and making sure to get the twists out of your fabric because you do not want this to be twisted. It's sort of like when working in the round with crocheting, you have a really long chain. You don't want it to be twisted, right? When you're working in the round, well, it's sort of the same thing, if I can make an analogy there. All right, now I'm gonna have to trim a couple more of these strands. No problem. A little snip and a little snip. There we go. Okay, so just laying the layers on top of each other, getting the twist out. And then what I can do is I can lay this on a chair next to where I'm working, and be able to grab what I need to in order to keep going with the next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing the accordion method with my long strip, and I will meet back up with you for the next step. Okay, so I have my entire strip all folded up in a accordion fashion, and this right here is my other end. And so this is the right side, and we have the right side here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this end and the other end, and I'm going to bring them, I'm going to sort of scoot them over to my sewing machine while maintaining this pile here. Basically, I'm just going to be grabbing from the top and from the bottom of the pile, trying to keep the pile itself intact so that it does not get twisted. And again, please forgive my camera work right now. I'm doing the best that I can, single-handedly, literally. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically take this end and the bottom end and feed them through, sewing along the seam lengthwise for the entire length of this strip. Basically, it's going to not make it longer, but going to be making it twice as wide as it currently is. So let's go over to the machine, shall we? Okay, so now we are ready for the next step. So again, I have my right side facing my right side, grabbing from the top and the bottom of my pile. Be sure not to twist or tangle up your fabric strips. Now, since this is going to be the longest seam in the project, you want to make sure that you have a nice full bobbin and a couple of extra full ones on hand. Also, you really don't need to pin this. Just line up your fabric so that the edges are matching and go in with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to go throughout this entire length in exactly this fashion. And even though this is called the Jelly Roll Race, you can take your time. Just follow the edge of the fabric and you're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get through the length of this, which is going to take a while, believe you me. In fact, I'm probably going to need to change bobbins as well. But when I am approaching the end, I'm going to show you the next crucial step so that you can continue on. So I'm going to keep sewing just a 1/4 inch seam along the entire length, and I will see you when I'm done. Be right back. All right, so moment of truth, we're almost done. This is the folded end, and I got through the rest of it. Actually, you can see nice big old pile. And so we are in the home stretch for the first main seam. So I'm going to sew a little bit more, and then we have to cut this, and I'll show you how to do that. So just continue on for a little bit. Till we get a little bit closer. All right, so now at about this point, you need to cut this loop. So I just go in with my skizzers here. Actually, which way would be easier? Seriously. There we go. And it does not have to be very clean or precise or neat because we are going to clean up our edges, to finish up the project later. Much later. But right now, just finish up the rest of this seam right here. Voila, there you go. And gonna feed this in so we have something to work with later. And yes, I did have to use another bobbin. I did run out. Not a big deal though. Okay, and then snip, snip. Okay, so now back to the floor and we'll see what we have. All right, so essentially we're going to be doing the same thing that we had done previously. This time though, we need to open up the seam that we just created. Now, as far as ironing it, you could do it at this point. However, what I like to do actually is when I'm done with the entire piece, then I like to have all of my seams going in the same direction. To me, it makes it a little bit easier. If, however, you want to iron at this point, you totally can, and it would help it to lay flat a little bit easier, but I really didn't have any, problem in that area. So basically, open it up, lay it out flat with the right side facing up, and we're going to do the accordion once again to make sure that it's not twisted, not tangled, and it gets us ready for when we want to do the exact same thing again at the sewing machine. And the nice thing, the really nice thing about this process is that every time you do another seam, it's shorter and shorter and shorter by half, because we took that one initial long length of our strip and, well, we shortened it by half by cutting it like we did. And we're going to do the same thing again and again until the piece is done. So just opening it up, laying it out flat, and doing our accordion. Now, this is not a, completely necessary step. However, I found that it makes it a lot easier when you're sitting at the sewing machine and you don't want to deal with it getting messy or tangled. Also, if you're not able to do the entire project in one sitting, this is a great way to sort of store it so that it's not one big tangled mess if you don't have a chance to finish it in one go. So what I'm going to do is I am going to continue to lay this out accordion style, and then we will be able to continue on with the next seam. Now, as far as the exact number of seams, well, we shall see. Eventually it gets to the point where no matter how many more times you sew it together lengthwise and cut it, it pretty much becomes the same piece, the same dimensions. You get to a certain point. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I will see you when I'm finished and we're ready for the next seam. Okie dokie, so done folding it up accordion style. To recap, we have the right side facing up the very beginning that we started with, and then the end here, it's going to be the right side facing down, and that way when we go over to the machine, it will be right sides facing together and also only pulling from the top and the bottom, leaving the middle intact so that it won't get tangled and twisted. So, you know what? Let's head over to the machine and let's do another run together. All right, so back at the machine, make sure that your ends have right sides facing together, and also you don't have to worry about these seams lining up. It's just the edges that you want to concern yourself with. And again, going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance for the entire length. And at this point, if you haven't already, you might want to fill up your bobbin and refresh that. And so what I'm going to do is work my way down this length. And I will meet back up with you when I'm almost finished with this second seam, okay? So I will see you in a bit. Hello, hello. All right, so almost done with the second seam, and it took half as much time because it's half as long. And yeah, so almost done with this one. And then we'll cut it in the same fashion. There we go, so trusty scissors and snip, snip. Come on. There we go. Right there. Okay. Because you need that bottom loop to be open. So just going to finish up sewing this down. And there we go. And I did not run out of my bobbin this time. Proof positive that the seams are shorter. All right, so from here, going to cut my threads, and let me just adjust my camera here for a second. There you are. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before, where I'm going to take my length, lay it out flat, and do the accordion style. And this I'm going to be doing a couple more times, and I will keep track of how many more seams that I do in order to get the desired result. So this was seam number 2. So I'm going to keep track of how many, and I will give you updates as we go. I'll see you in a bit. Hello again. Okay, so I've been doing a little bit of sewing off camera so that I would have something to show you. Now this, what I have right here, is after a total of 4 long seams. Okay, so this is currently what we have. Now, if I am not mistaken, we just need one more. Yeah, just one more long seam, and then the piece will be finished. It's amazing how fast this comes together. So, just laying it out, again, folding right side on top of right side so that they're facing together. Line it up. And then with those 2 right sides facing together, just sew along the one side seam. And then, before you finish it off, cut along this folded edge so that it will open up. And there you go. So, after 5 long seams, you have a quilt top. So, I'm going to head over to the machine, do my doing, and I will show you the results. I'll be right back. Alrighty, my dears, so after the 5th seam and cutting that folded edge, this is the result, and I tell you, I could not be more pleased. I love the blending of the colors, the sort of random organic nature of it. I love it, seriously. Now, when we first started this project, and I had said to take either the first or the last strip and trim it down, so that it's not the full length, that creates the staggered look of the pieces. If you don't do that, the seams are pretty much going to line up in a vertical fashion, and honestly, I don't think it would have quite the same appeal. This, absolutely love the random nature of it. Oh, it's just, I love it. All right. Alrighty, so that pretty much wraps up today's video on how to make a jelly roll race quilt. Now, granted, this is just the top. In a future video, I would really like to show you how to sandwich things together with the top, some batting, and some backing fabric, put it all together, and make a finished quilt. But that is going to come in another video. As far as the dimensions of this particular piece, now granted, I have not trimmed it down yet. The top and the bottom, where it's just, long strip, probably not going to trim those down. I'm probably going to trim the sides a little bit to even it up. I haven't done that yet, but when I do that, it will be a little bit smaller. At the moment, it is 61 inches by 53 inches. And so it will shrink down just a little bit. Also, when we do our sandwiching and sewing and so forth, that will shrink it down a little bit more. Now, if you're not crazy about the dimensions of this particular piece, you can change it. You can add a border, you can add some strips on the top and the bottom to make it longer. by all means, you can customize this. Now, word to the wise. I thought that I was being smart when I first tried to do this particular project. In an earlier example, I thought, well, wait a minute. If you use one jelly roll, it gives you this size. Well, what if you use 2 jelly rolls? No, it doesn't quite work the same way, because if you work in the exact same fashion as we have been doing for this video with 2 jelly rolls, what you end up with is a really, really long blanket. Yes, a very, very long blanket. And it's not going to be wider, it's just going to be a really long blanket. So picture, say, 53 inches wide by like 120 inches long. Yeah, so actually with that piece, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to make half of it the front and half of it the back, so it's going to be reversible. So we learn through trial and error. We learn. So just wanted to give you that heads up if you had that idea. I already tried it. But if you want a reversible, 2-sided jelly roll race quilt, okay, go for it. That being said, I really hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, please give a little thumbs up button down below. You know that I appreciate your appreciation. And please let me know what you think. Granted, this is, like I said, the first time that I tried to do sewing on this channel, so filming it was a little bit trickier than what I'm used to, but I forged ahead and I hope that it was satisfactory. So let me know. I'm totally open to constructive criticism. Please be kind. I am always trying my best to bring new things to you and teach you new techniques and new crafts and so forth. And hey, I think it's a lot of fun. So that being said, until next time, you know what to do, right? I want all of you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay stitching, and stay safe. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now, everybody, and have a great day.